I'm going to read you a passage from the Bible that is in 1 Kings chapter 19. I will start in verse 9 and finish after verse 15. And he came thither into a cave, and lodged there. And, behold, the word of the Lord came to him. And he said unto him, What doest thou here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts. For the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek to take my life, to take it away. And he said, Go forth, and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And, behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. And it was so when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in mantle, and went out, and stood in the entering of the cave. And, behold, there came a voice unto him, and said, What doest thou here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life, to take it away. And the Lord said unto him, Go, return the way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when thou comest, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. So what does this passage tell us? It's the first passage in the Bible that identifies the fact that God speaks to us through our conscience. What does that mean? That means that God actually does speak to you. I was told when I was younger that God speaks to us. And I didn't believe it at the time because I had never heard it. I never heard God speak to me, and I assumed that it was a metaphor that people used. And they said that God speaks to you, or he speaks to you through the Bible, or he speaks to you through his actions. And it was almost like they were trying to say that God spoke to us, but that he really didn't. But I realized only about a year ago that God does literally speak to you. He does it all the time. When I was younger, I was tempted to sin in many ways, and I said no. Now, it wasn't because I had identified that as a sin. It wasn't because I would not have enjoyed that sin, although maybe that's part of it. But something told me to say no to it. A still small voice. So if you're ever wondering, how do you know if something is right or if something is wrong to do? Listen. And that's partially what you're doing in prayer. See, prayer is not for God. God is not benefiting from your prayers. You are. And so if you only talk to God the entire time, of course you can think of the solution, and sometimes it doesn't happen, and sometimes that's how God works through us. But sometimes it's not you who thinks. It's not you who finds the solution, but it's God. And he speaks to you through your conscience. Some people have identified God himself with the conscience. Like, your consciousness isn't you, it's God, fully God. Like, the consciousness within you, since it's we don't understand it, we don't know what exactly it is, we can't really explain it, we can't recreate it. People identified that with God himself. I don't think that your consciousness itself is God, but I think that he speaks through your consciousness. And because of that, we can directly talk with God. We can literally speak with God. Now, sometimes he doesn't answer. But most of the time when he doesn't answer, it's because you know the answer. Or because he's about to do something in your life that's going to answer. God, of course, can speak to us through our consciousness, but he can also speak by his actions. And he can also speak through the Bible. And he uses those quite often to communicate his message to us. Why don't we just hear a voice from heaven that tells us exactly what we need to do in our lives? Because the thing that tells us what we need to do in our lives is inside of here. You just Google Bible.com. If you're watching this, that means you're watching it on a laptop, on a TV, on a phone, on whatever. You can access the Bible. Why doesn't God just speak clearly enough to us? He has. So reading the Bible is not just an action that you have to do in order to be a good person. But the Bible is a blueprint to life. The Bible is what tells us what we need to do in our lives. And it's a way that God speaks to us to get his message, his point and lesson across to us. And if you want God to speak to you, if you want God to answer your prayers, and you're wondering why he isn't, it's probably because you aren't actually seeking him. If you are trying to do God's will, if you are actually trying your best to be the best person that you can be, God is going to reveal himself to you. But if not, if you're wasting your life away playing video games all day long, then obviously God's not going to reveal himself to you. Because you aren't doing actions, you aren't doing things that would cause him to reveal himself to you. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations.